How's it?
Well, hello, everyone. It is lovely to see some familiar faces, some very familiar. So some who are part of our leadership embodiment community, and then there's the ontological community. And then lovely to meet some new folk. Really appreciate you being here. You know, one of the things I always remind myself is how we spend our time is how we spend our life. So best to make it count. And we really are, Lisa and I are looking forward to sharing a bit about leadership embodiment with you over the next couple of hours. And Julia, before we start, huge appreciation to you for creating the platform for community and learning. And although I haven't been physically part of any of the community, I have listened to some of the recordings, and it feels to me like a very rich place to come and learn together. We will do introductions in a little while, if that's okay. So we really want to move into having some experiences together and also giving you a chance to put your voice into the room. So if you, and we will share with you what we're going to be focusing on over the course of our time together. Let me just share screen. Oh, Julia, if you could give me permission sharing, please.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
There you go.
Thank you. And welcome, Nazima. Nice to see you in the room with us too. So the first thing we'd like to do, once I get that off the screen, is give you an opportunity. So we're going to be looking at leadership embodiment and talking more about that. But to start with, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment and just checking in with yourself and writing down one word for each of these areas: thoughts, emotions, and body. Just to check if everyone is complete. If you could just give me a thumbs up, yeah, great. Okay. Super. The next thing I'd like to do is to take us through what's at the heart of this work, which is it's called the basic centering practice. So if you could just go along for a little while with me. And you're welcome to disconnect from the screen, but I'm going to encourage you to keep your eyes open. So if you'd like to just take a moment and feel your body in the chair that you're in, your feet on the ground. Get a sense of that. Now I'm going to talk you through a concentration and just follow along as best you can. So with your next inhalation, feel yourself getting a little bit taller in the chair, your head moving up towards the sky. And then with your exhalation, keeping that lovely uplifted posture, soften down the front. And then again, inhale, getting just a little bit taller, a little bit brighter. Then a long, slow exhale, softening down the front. If we had a way to measure the heat around our body, it would be about an arm's distance. It's called our peripersonal space. So paying attention to the space in front of you about an arm's distance, imagining you've got eyes in the back of your head, focusing on the space behind your body, on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So the space around your body there, above your head and below your feet. And then with the next exhalation, keeping that uplifted posture, but allowing your jaw and shoulders to soften a little bit more. And inviting a quality. Is there a little more ease in your being right now? Where would you notice it? I'm just being a little interested and curious. And then starting to attune back to the room. And the invitation is to, again, take a moment. Let me share screen. Here we go. If you'll just take a moment now and check in with yourself and write down one word for each of these areas: thoughts, emotion, and body. And I have put that in the chat as well, the instructions. So all right. And you might still be busy. What would really be lovely is to hear from each person if you're willing to, and you're welcome to just say pass if you don't want to. But we're curious to know, having done that check-in with yourself, then doing the centering practice, and then doing another check-in across those three areas, was anything different for you? And also, if you could briefly introduce yourself, and that's literally headlines of name, where you are in the world, and a sentence about your background. So what you noticed was different in those two check-ins with self, and then briefly introduce yourself.
I'm happy to go.
Yeah.
What stood out for me most was body. So I wrote down crunched at first before checking in, and now I'm feeling more rooted in my space. My name is Kim, and yeah, I'm a coach. I'm in Somerset West. That's me.
Thanks, Kim.
I'll go next. So I'm Claudia, and I'm a coach. My primary training was ontological coaching, and I did a lot of that with Karen as my teacher. And yeah, doing that exercise, I noticed today that my thoughts became more focused, and the energy in my body shifted from very calm to a little bit more energized, actually, and tingly. So that's me. And yeah, it's nice to be here with everyone today.
Very nice to see you, Claudia.
Thanks, Claude. I'll jump in. Lovely to see you again, Karen. So I noticed that I came in a little scattered, a little excited and scattered. And after the practice, felt a lot more settled in mind, body, and emotion. And I'm Kate. I'm in Notok. I'm a coach and facilitator, and I love ontological.
Lovely to see you again, Kate. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rob. I'm in Rondebosch in Cape Town. I had a run before the session, so actually my body felt refreshed and settled at the start. but my thoughts were very scattered. And I found the process, or the centering exercise, I feel a little bit more focused and clearer thinking-wise. My main work that I do is work with financial planners, sort of developing a coaching way of being for financial planners to engage with their clients.
Thanks, Rob.
Good morning. My name is Miriam. I live in the East Coast of the US in the green state of Vermont. My initial coaching program was ontological, and that was a long time ago. And I've been studying many different theories and philosophies. And I stepped into the call a little bit rushed. And as we were sitting down and really looking at this, I noticed my thoughts settling, my emotions, breathing into my emotions and sitting in my chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Miriam, and good morning to you from good afternoon here.
Andrea, and I'm in London in the UK. And I'm also a coach in relationships and intimacy. And I came in spinning, so I was buzzing quite a bit from a busy day. And so I noticed my body mostly kind of, and then as we settled, I felt my body kind of settled down deeper into being here now. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Andrea.
Okay, Pete, go ahead.
You go first. I'll go next.
Hi everyone, I'm Nazima. I'm based in Cape Town. I'm a coach and a psychologist. And I think the biggest shift for me was around my thoughts. I think my body was quite settled, but there was more clarity around my thinking.
Thanks, Nazima.
Great.
Nice.
I am Pete. I'm currently in Johannesburg, normally in Kenton-on-Sea, but I'm up in Joburg for the week. Prefer it in Kenton, just by the way. Before, very much monkey mind thoughts, much calmer afterwards. Not much shift on the emotional side. I was very aware of my legs and feet specifically. I've been using a standing desk and I realized I'm quite tired. So, but afterwards it shifted more to a whole body space. So interesting shift for me. Thank you. And I'm a coach.
Thanks, Pete.
I'll go next. I felt a lot more settled, a lot of thinking before I got here. And the body, yeah, I'm feeling quite warm now and settled. So my name is Leela. I'm a leadership embodiment coach and a mindfulness-based facilitator. And I'm in Cape Town, South Africa.
Nice to see you, Leela.
I'll go next. I'm Annalita Watlow, and I feel a bit unsure. I'm not sure what to expect from the session. I've recently got my accreditation, so this is professionally, this is new for me. So I'm sitting here. Body is cold because of the weather, and I'm a sunshine baby, but I think I'm ready to learn more about coaching and to absorb.
Lovely. Oh, welcome.
By the way, I'm in Cape Town.
Okay. And I think you'll find that we're all learners here. So look forward to learning with you.
Okay, I'll go next. Good afternoon, and Karen, it's nice to actually put a face to a name that I think I've interacted with before.
But much like the previous participant, I'm an aspiring coach, let me say, coach in learning, an assessment practitioner. And yeah, I found the exercise and based in Pretoria, perhaps a notch or a degree or two warmer, perhaps, than those in the rest of the South African continent. But yes, in terms of the activity, yeah, it was interesting. I was rushing back from having picked up my child. So in terms of my thought, emotions, and body, everything was the sense of busyness and almost emotion of a little bit of anxiety and rushing to, you know, get to the workshop on time. But with that exercise, it was amazing how it just relaxed, brought a sense of calm and just, you know, that engagement was the word that came to me in terms of the connection, the cognitive sort of thought element. So it was very interesting. Thanks.
Thanks, Roisin. Just give another minute or moment. If you do want to go for it, Karen, yes. Or is it Karen? Mine's Karen. I don't know if yours is Karen or Karen.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Karen, and I'm actually not in Cape Town, although I live in Cape Town. I left Cape Town the end of last month and have been away for 3.5 weeks or so. I'm in Europe at the moment, in Spain, on the Costa Brava. So that's like near the French border, but about an hour and a half north of Barcelona. So I also rushed here, but not like all of you with busy days. I'm here on holiday with my family, and we've had a late lunch, and it's actually started raining. So I thought, good opportunity to join this class. I was like, I'm really interested in this. I really want to join, but should I be rather go to the beach? And the rain it's been rain because it's been so hot. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm really fascinated in this topic, and I'm looking forward to this session. Thank you.
Karen. Thanks, Karen. You've got a great tan, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh. All right. Anyone else want to? I think it's, yeah.
Yeah. So my name's Undre. I could see you kind of trying to go there, but not quite being courageous enough. It's Undre, just like Andre. So I work in higher education. I work for the University of Cape Town. I work in transformation, diversity, and inclusion. And my background is research psychology, which I also did at UCT. I suppose I'm a mediator, coach, and a facilitator, all in one, using different modalities depending on the individual case that I'm trying to work on. In terms of how I felt, I suppose I entered the room quite diffused, you know, kind of still going through the to-do list, what's priorities and what's not. And definitely after the session, it was just like, oh, there I am in, you know, fully connected again, whole. So I guess I'm reflecting that it really just made me feel much more whole.
Thanks. Andre, have I? Ah, good. All right. Julia, I know you were in and out, so I want to just give you an opportunity if you want to check in any way.
So just as I settled in after the second time, a small homework drama erupted in various forms. And I managed to it along. I don't know why it was allowed to come into my world, but I managed to shoot it off to the side. And I'm back and very happy to be here.
Thanks, Julia. All right, well, shall I introduce myself, Lisa, and then you can introduce yourself, and then we can move into some of the context and content and further exploration. So I am Karen. I am trained as a leadership embodiment coach and teacher. and also as an ontological coach. And I share both aspects of work with people, and it's such a joy to do so because I get to be a learner all the time. And I met Wendy Palmer in 2009 and have been delighted to carry this flag and to share this work with others because it's made such a big difference. And it's simple practices that are profound and that I come back to again and again. And I'm a different person as a result of these practices. I can honestly say that. So that's enough about me, and very happy to have conversations another time about who I am. So over to you, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here with you. I am Lisa Hansford. I live in Cape Town. I am also a leadership embodiment coach and teacher, and also integrally trained, and also draw on ontological methodology. I guess the way that I like to look at my work is really working with clients, partnering with clients to support them to build confidence and really achieve the results that are important to them. And I found leadership embodiment has just made such an enormous difference in what I'm able to offer my clients. The tools and practices are simple, they're deeply empowering, and obviously they have also made a massive difference in my life in terms of how I show up as a coach. So wonderful tools to share, and obviously wonderful practices to work with myself. I was first introduced to leadership embodiment about 15 years ago when Karen invited Wendy to come to South Africa. And during that time, she became a wonderful teacher and a dear friend. And continues to be a huge inspiration in my life. And I really look forward to sharing the practices with you today, and hope that you are going to find them just as valuable.
Thanks, Lisa. So sadly, Wendy passed away last year. So we miss her in our lives physically, and are so grateful to have the practices and the community to keep exploring together and growing. And I think the word that you used, Lisa, is inspiration. I think these practices are about how do we inspire ourselves and others and make a contribution in the world. And it's so lovely. Thank you, everyone, for what you shared about the difference between when you arrived and I asked you to check in, the centering practice, and then how you felt afterwards. And one of the things we say in this work is you can't change your mind with your mind alone. If you could have, you would have. And so the leadership embodiment practices allow us to create a state change. And so that's a physiological change, and it's also a chemistry change. And, I think there are so many things out there in the world calling our attention, and embodiment is often the least of it. And so this is very much about, from a phenomenological perspective, how can we create a state change that shifts our perception and therefore can shift our behavior? So without having to have a whole lot of talking about, through doing these physical practices, we are able to access a different, we're able to move from kind of being stuck to big picture thinking. So our perception, we're able to perceptually change. And what we do is we use the body as a simulator. So it's our laboratory. And we do that in a number of ways. So what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about what we're going to be covering today. And there is some content, and then there's some, we really believe that it is phenomenological. So we can talk all we like, but it's actually in the experience. So we've got a couple of experiential exercises depending on how far, how much time we have. But we'd like to start off with also checking in a little bit about your experience with the body. So we don't want to assume this is one particular area of learning. We don't want to assume that you don't come with any learning. So we'll check in with you in terms of your experience. Then we'll give you a short overview of leadership embodiment and the model, if you like, that sits in the background. Then we'll move into at least one exercise, maybe two, check in with you what questions you have, and then we'll also share with you what offerings we have and how to be in touch with us. So how does that sound as a way to spend the rest of our time together? Yay, I'm getting nods. Okay. I'm always struck and appreciative of how much wisdom there is in these rooms. And what we would like to do is give you an opportunity to spend 12 minutes in a room talking with each other. And so some questions for you on your own coaching practice. And it doesn't matter where you are in your coaching journey, and it doesn't matter if you have very little. It's no problem. It's really just to start to open up an inquiry. So these questions, and I'll pop them in the chat. In fact, Lisa, have you got them? Just to check that you could maybe put them in the chat while I work through them. That would help. Okay, thank you. So the questions are, what awareness do you have of your own body in coaching and the impact that has on who and how you are as a coach? How do you use your body in coaching? How do you explore using the body of your client's body in coaching? And what learning have you done in this area? So as I say, not to assume that you haven't done any learning. And that's really an opportunity to share wisdom with each other. And we'll come back and then probably ask in the chat to share what came out for you, what your key learnings were. Does that make sense? Cool. So Julia, I think can you help with breakout rooms? I think maybe three or four people in a breakout room.
Okay, you want 3? I've got 2. I'll just move them around. That's all good.
Thank you. And if you, we'll stay in, Julia and I think we'll stay in the room. So if you want any questions answered or you need help, just give us a shout. But enjoy the conversation for the next little while.
It's are you okay with just one group with 4 in?
Perfect. Yeah.
All right. Okay, great. You ready? Shall I open them?
Go for it. Welcome back. We would love to hear from 1 or 2 people just what insights that you think would be useful to share with the group came out. And then the other thing is for everyone, if you'd like to put something in the chat, no pressure, but it would be great just to hear what that conversation produced for you.
Okay, I'll go. I think if I was to, my takeaway from the group was how all of us, there were 4 of us in the group, all of us are using it, all of us see it important, and that all of us have seen increased importance over the last couple of years. I hope I'm giving a fair summation for the 3 that I'm representing.
Yeah, thanks. And Pete, if I could ask, and you might not have an immediate response, but what is it that has had you saying there is increased importance in terms of working with the body?
Yes, for the experience of amongst the 4 of us.
Okay. All right.
Karen, maybe I'll add on. Look, I think we're all recognizing the power of working with the body and how transformational it can be, and how a lot of clients maybe haven't usually tapped into that or don't know that intelligence that well. So by starting to tap into that intelligence, it just widens the perspective of what's happening and offers quite a quick gateway actually for somebody to shift something, because we know when we shift our posture or shift something in our body, we can shift so much, right? And the neuroscience points to that, combining what ontological teaches us, language, body, emotion, using those aspects as practices that can transform and map new neural pathways.
Yeah, fantastic, Kate. And I think, Wendy used to say, if thinking were enough, we'd all be enlightened. And unless we have embodied something different, very often we can have an idea about something, but if it isn't embodied, it doesn't translate into new and different action. And by action, that would include perceiving, thinking, speaking, listening, the decisions we take, the way we relate. So it's a very broad area. And I love you bringing in ontological coaching, because I think leadership embodiment and ontological coaching fit beautifully together. I also did integral, but I couldn't think of a better fit in terms of the practices that leadership embodiment brings. So that's fantastic. And if there are any comments in the chat, please add. What we're going to do is we're going to move on and talk a little bit more about the model and the approach. Here we go. But I think one of the things to highlight is how the body links to our moods. So if you change the body, you change the tone, you change the mood, you change yourself. And from a leadership point of view, you change the environment. So if we shift at the level of our body and we shift at the level of our mood, then when people walk into the environment, they are welcomed into our space. And that's a big part of leadership embodiment, is how do we ensure that we are welcoming even when the stakes are high? And I think that's part of the power of this work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going, and Julia or Lisa, if there are things in the chat or there are things that you, Lisa, especially if there are things you want to add, just hop in, so that this is a conversation as much as the slides up on the screen, and the same applies to everyone else.
Karen, maybe just to hop in there quickly, is just to kind of around changing the environment, is that research does tell us that 70 to 80% of communication is nonverbal. So what I find clients are always very interested to explore with this work is that, from a leadership perspective, what are they communicating without actually saying a word? And that's something they haven't often paid attention to. And this work really helps them to start sort of exploring that part of themselves, and what are they bringing? What is the presence that they're bringing into their environments, and what impact is that having? So it's such a critical piece for me that how important it is that that you can change your environment.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. It's a great build. What we'd like to do is just talk a little bit about the roots of the work and then share with you the model. It's actually a very simple model, which I think is where the power rests, because I think so often that things can be quite overcomplicated. But the roots of the work comes from Aikido, and Aikido is a martial art focused on blending energy. And Morihei Shiba, who developed Aikido, one of his famous sayings is, "It's not that I don't lose my center, it's that I recover so quickly you don't notice." And this is key in leadership embodiment. It's not about like, oh, we should be Zen and have arrived and stay in a particular state. It's about having a set of practices that allow us to rebalance, that allow us to recenter. So Aikido is on the one hand, and then mindfulness. And in this, here's this interpretation, is paying attention to the present moment instead of trying to either deal with the past or be in the future. Is how do we attend to what is, and in the moment be able to make a shift? And what are the practices that allow for this? So yeah, so that just gives you a little bit of a background. And we make two distinctions, and we specifically don't use the word ego, but ego, you know, so people will come and say, well, like, does this mean ego? And really what we're trying to do is offer a way of distinguishing, because we can land up getting into lots of conversations about what ego is, get very theoretical. So this is a way of just thinking about it in very simple terms. And we talk about personality. And personality, it manages the stuff of life. And that includes ourselves, it includes people, it includes concepts, and it includes things. And we make a distinction between three parts of our body. So we've got our head, and in personality, when we're trapped there, and it's a very normal part of life, it's our survival pattern. So we're not trying to get rid of our personality, but we do want to know more about it. When we're in our personality at a head level, it's about how do I control myself, others, what I'm learning. At a heart level, it's about approval. It's, of course, connection is important, but it's like I've got to manage my relationship with others. And then at a core level, it's about safety. How do I ensure I feel safe in this conversation, in this environment, in this world? And too much personality can have us be quite dysfunctional because it's about managing. It's trying to organize things in a certain way. In this model, what's lovely about it is we're not trying to get rid of our personality. What we are wanting to do is become familiar and make friends with our personality, because our personality got us to where we are. The thing is that from the way we've been socialized and our learning is our personality is often overdeveloped, and we rely on kind of trying to manage things. So in leadership embodiment, we're interested in, well, we're interested in rehabilitating this other part of ourselves, which is called center. And center is about interconnectedness. It's this understanding, and I mean, there are some spiritual roots to this work, which you can step into or not, but it's really recognizing that as human beings, we are interconnected. There is no escaping that. We wouldn't be able to survive if we weren't interconnected. We rely on each other. We also rely on the biosphere. So we rely on this planet. And I think that's very topical at the moment. So it's really about recognizing, moving from sort of trying to manage things to big picture thinking, intuition, and the flow state. So it's about rehabilitating this part of us that as children, we just knew we were connected. And if you look at a head level, when we're centered, it's about perception and wisdom and accessing that. It's about accessing compassion at a heart level and confidence at a core level. And that is with ourselves as well as with others. So let me just pause there and see if there are any questions about those two distinctions, and also any comments you want to make, Lisa. Yeah, Kate, go for it.
Karen, what are you meaning by core? Are you meaning gut? And then I'm also intrigued by Enneagram links, right? I know a lot of us are familiar with the Enneagram, and the head is about control. Normally we would say the gut center is about control, right? And the head center about safety. So I wonder if you could comment and help me make sense of that.
Yeah. I can't comment on the Enneagram piece, although there is and I'm going to try and find it and send it to Julia, and she can send it on. Wendy once did a clip of the various Enneagram types and how they approach cutting carrots. So that's the booby prize in response to me not being able to answer your question, because I haven't mapped the Enneagram and leadership embodiment per se. What I would say, the core, the way we used to talk about it when it was conscious embodiment, is it's our hara. So it's, if you take your 2 fingers 2 centimeters below your belly button is the hara. So that's our core. And that, if you think about it, so I will make a link to moods, is the moment we feel anxious, what happens is we disengage at our core. So what we do is we use the body as a simulator, and we do something called partner centering. And when you apply pressure, and if someone experiences anxiety, the tendency is they'll disengage their core, they'll move back. So their head will come forward, which is about, I'm trying to manage things. Depending what's happening with their arms, it might be, I want to keep a boundary, or I give my boundary away. And then the core will often disengage. So, okay. Anything else?
Just can you talk a bit more about confidence?
What specifically would you like to know about confidence, Rob?
Well, what makes you make the link between confidence and the core? So why is confidence the factor that is what I'm understanding you say is that when you're centered,
yes,
you access confidence from the core. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. And so if you think about it, and you can even think about it in terms of tone of voice, Rob. So when someone's anxious, they often are not speaking from an aligned place. They're kind of talking from their head. Whereas when we're able to connect with our core, we feel because it's not just our core, it's down to our legs. We experience the whole of ourselves, and we can come congruently and with confidence. So as I was sharing with Kate, when we disconnect, if someone applies pressure and we lack confidence, our core will kick out. We'll actually move back. So our hips will move out of alignment.
Thank you.
Pleasure. I think a very quick example, I was working with someone, and I wasn't using leadership embodiment per se, but I was using the principles of leadership embodiment. And she was talking about walking into a boardroom. And she showed me the way she walked, and I'll sometimes demonstrate to great laughter in workshops. She walked in very tentatively, but also quite disengaged, so kind of moving forward. And we did some work, and once she was able to connect with her core, and she was able to walk into the room in that way, she experienced herself differently, and others did as well. And interestingly, Wendy did a lot of work in the prisons at one stage. And what she did was, with people not realizing how much the core mattered, what she would do, she would get them to get a piece of clothing and actually wrap it around their core so they could feel into it. It also links to our breathing. If you think about, when we're anxious, our breathing is up here versus, and there's a shift. So does that answer your inquiry?
Great, yeah. Thank you.
Super. Yeah. Lisa, anything you want to add?
No, I think maybe just to sort of amplify the idea of, that we're studying the 3 parts of ourselves in a different way in this work. So, control, approval, and safety are part of our reactive pattern. And so what we're trying to do is rehabilitate the centered part of ourselves, which offers wisdom, compassion, and confidence as a contrast. So it's really just helps us to kind of put those sort of qualities or characteristics to each of the centers. And so you can imagine if you were somebody that was really struggling to speak up, to be able to connect to your core and speak with confidence could be really, really helpful. But that the important thing in this work is that, as Karen said, are often out of alignment when we react. And so center offers us an opportunity to align all three centers. And from that place, we come from a much more spacious, calm, wise, and confident body. And if that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And Andrea, I love what you've said here. Our center of gravity is located at our hara. And absolutely, you know, if you think about where is the center of our body, and where we likely, what happens when we thrown off center is there's an impact there. There can be an impact at the heart level as well. So what we do is we look at our patterns through applying pressure, using leadership embodiment. But certainly our center of gravity is, you know, it links to breathing as well. And then I'm just, sorry, I want to just have a look at from Kim, insights for clients who might be more resistant, caught in thinking, recognize that the body sends messages to the brain and not only the other way around. Yeah, and what they're realizing now is 80% of communication happens from the vagus nerve, from the body up. So how important it is to pay attention to the body and use it as a source of wisdom. I want to just check Leela and Nazima, because you both, Leela, you're trained in this work. If there's anything you'd like to add, and no expectations or pressure, just making space.
I was just gonna, I think something that Andrea said about the hara, or center of gravity, and when you talk about a center of gravity, and I think that's where she spoke about the core also. So I just wanted to say that it's been mentioned. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah. And again, and Nazima, not to put you on the spot, just want to see if there's anything you want to bring in, because you've had, okay. Thank you. All right, we're going to keep rocking and rolling, if that's okay. And let's see. So what we're interested in this work is focusing on 3 leadership competencies. And the first one is inclusiveness. And it's more than a lip service. It's this absolute felt sense we are in this together. We are interconnected, that when we are centered, nothing is required of us. So, you know, I think some of the assessments we might have about ourselves, not being good enough, not feeling like we belong, well, by virtue of being centered, we have a right to be here. We're on this planet, we're connected. So that's the first piece. And I think the world certainly could benefit from that at the moment, is there's so much disparity. The second competency is, you know, it's really, really important for us to take a stand for what we believe in, if we're going to make a contribution in the world. And so being able to speak up in a way that is clear and precise, and where we don't need to be aggressive. It's not about like, you have to get my point. When we're centered, we can say what is so for us, and how people experience it is up to them. So that's one of the competencies we work with. And a big part of this is who and what inspires you, and how do you bring that inspiration through you, as opposed to feeling like you're alone and you have to do it all yourself. And also, I think some people spoke about, you know, when we did the concentration, being able to do so with clarity. So having a focus, starting to get in touch with what is important for us. And then centered listening. And that is about being able to listen to what is being said without taking it personally. And if you think about we have more and more data available to us. And so how do we listen, and how does that data become wisdom? And how do we grow together? And that's all about centered listening. So those are the key areas, and we have a number of different practices. So the baseline practice is the centering practice of uplifted posture, exhale. You know, one way of thinking about it is how we breathe is how we think, and how we think is how we breathe. So the breath is the first thing. How do we start to pay attention to space, which is a resource for us? How do we not hold unnecessary tension in our body? And how do we cultivate qualities that allow us to pay attention in the way that we want to? And how can we do this for clients? So that's the centering practice. And then we use physical pressure, because what we want to do is we want to engage our nervous system. We want to energize it and then be able to work with that energy in a way that allows us to stay centered. And unfortunately, because we're on screen, we can't do it. We can't do the pushing on each other, but that's a key piece. And that's how we use the body as a simulator. Okay, so what we'd like to do is move into an activity, so an experiment, and then we'll check in and see where we go next. So I'd like to invite you, let me do this, to think of something. I'm going to go, if you could think of something in the last 24 hours that has been mildly irritating or frustrating, not a big thing. So nothing that, you know, perhaps relationships where you've had like a huge blowout, just something small. Perhaps it was an interaction in a shop or with someone on the telephone. And I just want to check if everyone has something. If you could give me an indication when you do got something, Julia. It's not normally very difficult. With life happening. Okay. Anyone not got anything? All right. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to tense up. So kind of move yourself in, go back to the experience and remember it. And notice what happens for you in terms of the thoughts that come up, whether it's something you're saying to yourself, something you're saying to someone else. What happens for you emotionally? And body sensations you're aware of. Okay. All right. And if you could stop and just, if you wouldn't mind just sharing one or two words, either in the chat or online, about what you notice. Like for me, frustration comes up. So that would be my word. Andrea, great.
Tighten chest.
Tighten chest. Okay. Yeah. All right. So some people, physical sensation, jaw tighten, energy drops, irritated, constricting. Okay. Having a conversation or trying to do life in the state, not so much, right? All right. So if you wouldn't mind, we're going to do that centering practice that we did at the beginning. And so I'm going to talk us through it, and I'm going to do it with you. It's the beauty of this work. So again, becoming aware of your body in the chair. And softening your eyes. So not paying attention to the camera, just imagine your eyes can rest in their sockets for a moment. And then inhaling, uplifted posture towards the sky, long, slow exhale. And again, inhaling, getting a bit taller, keeping that posture and then softening down the front. You might even want to think about someone or something that makes you smile. Could be an inner smile. Then becoming aware of your peripersonal space. So arm's distance in front of you, space behind you, leaning back into that. The left-hand side, the right-hand side, above your head and below your feet. With your next exhalation, allowing your jaw and shoulders to release and soften, even the shoulder blades behind. Inviting a quality, say a little more ease or lightness. What would that be like? Now, remembering that event I asked you to think about that was mildly frustrating or irritating, and notice if it's any different for you. I'm just being curious about that. And then orientating back into the room. And again, feel free to just put some words in the chat, or what, if anything, so not assuming, what, if anything, changed in the experience? For me, it was not so serious. Lovely. Pete, was a ripple in a large ocean. Yeah. And I could have reacted differently or better. Experience felt further away, felt more distant, removed from the issue. The event no longer mattered. It's amazing, Royce, and how sometimes, you know, when we think about it, it's like, well, no biggie at all. It's no longer relevant, less intense, much less troublesome for me second time around. Space and distance, less sticky, less bothered, less irritated. Seems to me that would be a much better way to do life. That's really at the heart of this practice, is how do we, this state is available to us. But we've spent so much time paying attention to personality. And this is about when we center, all of a sudden, there's a shift in our perception. And it has an impact on us. It has an impact on our relationships. And it was very interesting. I was working with a client once. She was very caught in the grip of her experience. And we were in a public place. And I eventually said, look, I'd like to just stop you there. Can we just do a centering? And she said, yes. And we did exactly what we've done together. And I said, how are you feeling? She said, no, I'm not feeling any different. She carried on. And then I said, okay, gave her a couple more minutes. And then I said, can I pause? And we did the centering. And it was amazing over a period of time to watch the shift happen with her. And this is working at the level of our nervous system. And our nervous system doesn't differentiate between real or imagined. So we can very directly affect and create a state change without a whole lot of words through this centering practice. So again, I'd like to just pause and check in with you. We have another practice for you to do with each other and to have a little bit more of a play, but I want to see if there are any questions, if there's anything that's not making sense. You know, sometimes we've been working with this for so long, it's very obvious to us, and there might be some things that are not making sense at all. So feel free, any questions.
I've got a question, Lauren, around alignment. And yeah, so can you access wisdom in your head if you're not aligned in your core or your heart? So in other words, yeah, I mean, is the interconnection, what's the word? Compulsory.
Do you need all three?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that each of them are perceptual centers from this perspective, and then there's the congruence. So I think alignment brings something deeper. So one of the exercises we do, when we're not aligned, it's quite difficult to take action. So one of the things we might say is, what does my head say? This could be a practice, and that's about wisdom. What does my heart say? Might say something different. What does my core say? And each of them can offer a different perspective. And if we're out of alignment, so even if the head thinks, oh, well, I think this is a really good idea for the following reasons, if we're not aligned, sometimes our heart can say, no, I'm not cooperating. Or our core, like, oh, well, yes, I'd like to do it, but I don't think I can, because it doesn't feel safe for me. So the alignment, I think, does allow for a different action, a centered way forward. And each of them have value to offer. So it's for us, one of the things I've certainly learned with this work is there's no either or here. It's a yes and. So this practice allows us to see, yes, this is so, and.
Can I maybe also build on that, Karen? So Rob, one of the things that we look at really is when we are under stress and pressure, because this is really when we get constricted and we get knocked off balance. And we're studying the reactive pattern in our body. So the way that we kind of look at it is that stress comes in, our body tenses up, and our kind of thoughts kind of follow that. And that if we can make a shift in our body, that will shift and change what we're thinking and what we're feeling. So it's an embodiment practice. So we're kind of working with studying the body, seeing what happens in the body, and then working to change that so that we can change what we're thinking and feeling. So I don't know if that helps to kind of answer that question, but kind of, I guess, because it's an embodiment practice, we are studying the body rather than our wisdom or what's in our head. Although that is one of the centers, it's kind of an exploration of and using the body as a shortcut. If we can make those postural changes to notice the impact on our thinking and our feeling, as we just did in this little experiment.
I think the other thing just to offer is with the reactive pattern, is to see what our tendencies are. So some of us are much more focused on safety. Some of us are much more focused on control. And, there's that expression, what we resist persists. And very often we can talk about things, but we don't actually get to see what our pattern is. So this is about, what is my pattern? And then how do I notice it and not get stuck there? How do I use the body to shift?
I have a question. I'm also trained as an industrial psychologist, and as a result, I've studied body language, and I'm just wondering whether I can read the same or use that information, that knowledge, when sitting in a coaching session, where we used to say, and whether it's true or not, but that's the interpretation that if you close your arms, or that I'm not accessible,
Yes.
and create distance, is that the kind of thing that I also need to look out for? Can I use that as some of the usable knowledge in my coaching sessions?
Yeah. We wouldn't so much say, because in a way, I think what can happen is we can say, if this, then that, you know, so there can be, we can be very much in a cause and effect. What we are interested in leadership embodiment is the moment, and I'm going to see if I can, the moment I do this, I am constricting, getting smaller and getting tighter. And so that's going to affect my perception. It's also going to affect what I'm communicating. So what we do learn to do in this work is, okay, so how do I open up? How do I remain open and expansive and inclusive? So we have two muscle groups. We have these constrictor muscles, and then we've got these expansive muscle groups. And this is where, when we work with each other in partnership, is we learn how under pressure, how do I move from this constricted approach to being open and inclusive, even if what this person is saying, I don't like. So it's less about content and it's more about, I have a way of being that allows me to relate to myself and to others in a way that's open and inclusive. So what I'd hate, Annalita, is to think, okay, so if this, then that. However, there are some things that we can learn about the body and we can use to shift in the body that allow for us to relate to ourselves and others in a different way. Is that okay?
Karen, I think just the other thing to mention there is that when we fire those constricted muscles, that we our brain tells our body to release cortisol. So then we actually release more cortisol into our system, which obviously makes us more anxious, more constricted. Whereas if we can actually focus on calming our body and focusing on extending our extensor muscles, the brain tells the body to release testosterone, which is the confidence-inducing hormone. And then the other chemical that we work with is oxytocin. So that's why when Karen said to you when you were centering, think of something maybe that makes you smile. And what that does, it releases oxytocin into our system. So essentially in this work, what we're trying to do is reduce cortisol, have more testosterone, so more confidence, and have more oxytocin. So that's the kind of being able to give and receive support. So we're very much working at that level as well. I mean, our bodies are so incredibly complex and powerful, and it's such, I mean, I just find it fascinating that these simple practices create this cocktail effect that really, really you can experience in a very short time.
Pete.
Thanks, Corin. This is bringing back memory. I think it was Amy Cuddy's work was a lot about the constraining and closing in and then opening up. I haven't revisited her stuff for a while, and there was some criticism of her work of being too small a samples, etc. I'd just like to know, you know, how relevant is it, and any parallels with the leadership embodiment that you could comment on.
Yeah, we referenced her work because we felt that it was really useful, and I believe there were questions raised about it, as in any good academic field. And I believe there has been further research done, but I'm open to correction, that has said no, her studies were valid. And what I will share with you, Peter, so I love horse riding, anyone who knows me, and I love horses. And it's very interesting in listening to people who work in that field and work with helping people ride more confidently. What they say is that what happens when we are under stress is our midline moves in. So this constriction happens, and that has an impact on how we experience ourselves, others in the world, and how others experience us. So I think there's more and more research saying actually, no, the shift in the body has an impact on our chemistry, on our physiology, and then how we perceive things. There was something I wanted to say that's now gone, so maybe it'll come back. What we would love to do is to give you an opportunity, because it's all very well, you in a way you've been using yourself as a simulator, right, with the centering practice. Now what we'd like to do, and we're experimenting, so because you haven't had partner centering and that experience of being pushed on, in a way we don't know what's going to happen. So is everyone up for an experiment? And it might work, it might be big flop, no worries. What I will share with you as part of that, and I'm getting a yes, so that's great, I want to move into that. But you know, before I had done this work, I was so concerned about getting it right, and that's very much part of our personality. Whereas now what I've learned is, with some humor and some grace from center, things will happen and they'll work, and things will happen and they won't work, and being totally comfortable with both. So who knows what will happen? You can come back and report a failed experiment, but let's go for it. And what we'll do is Lisa will do a demo with me. We'll talk you through the exercise and the experiment. And then we'll put you into breakout rooms in pairs. So Julia, that's the cue for you. What Lisa's going to do, and this is if you like, this is upping the ante. So we're still using the basic centering practice, but I'll give Lisa a very short sentence to say to me, and I'm going to be in a constricted mode. So I'm going to get into my usual position of when I'm about to receive criticism. And by the way, while I'm doing this, if you'd like to take a photo of the screen, that would be great. So Lisa will give me her criticism that I'm actually, or say the criticism I'm going to give to her. I'm going to notice my pattern. And I'll share with you what my pattern is. And it's generally in the territory of either being defensive or aggressive or a combination. And you just want to notice your pattern. I'm not trying to change anything. And then I'll share my pattern with my partner. In this instance, it's Lisa. So that's the first thing. I want to see what happens when I'm in personality. Then I'm going to go through the centering, and Lisa, I might ask you to help me do that. So I'll ask you to narrate the centering process, and then Lisa will criticize me again. What I'm going to do when she does that is I'm going to disengage from her. I'm going to imagine, as she says the words, let the words land in the space. I'm also going to let the space respond. So I'm going to give her a response, but instead of reacting, I'm going to respond from center. And I'm going to just see what comes out of my mouth. So we'll demonstrate, and then we'll give you an opportunity to go into a room and practice. So in the meantime, if you can think of you don't want a major, so if you have a partner and you've had a fight with your partner and it was very heated, like, I'm not going to use my mom, let's put it that way. I'm not going to use a criticism my mom would give me, because that's going to be far too high intensity. I want to use some sort of a mild to medium criticism, because we're practicing centering, and it's building. So if you can, while Lisa goes through the process, think about a sentence you're going to share with your partner in the breakout room of a criticism they're going to give you. And as I say, not a hot chili one, a mild to medium. All right, so Lisa, the criticism you can give me, it was in a session, you shouldn't have said what you said in the room because I was in charge. Okay, and so give me a moment. So I'm gonna exaggerate, and I'm gonna So I've got my arms crossed, but for me, my jaw is tight. And I'm going to nod you in, Lisa.
Yeah. So Karen, you shouldn't have said what you said in the room because I was actually in charge.
So my immediate response, I know this could go sort of, I know this is going out, Julia, but my immediate response is aggressive. So old pattern that's still with me, and it would be screw you. That would be my immediate thing. Okay, so let's see. If you can, are you okay to take me through the centering practice?
Okay. So you're going to inhale and uplift. Nice uplifted posture. Long, slow exhale. Softening and settling. Paying attention to the space around you. And push your personal space out almost beyond your laptop to include me. So imagine that we're in this together. And then just to soften your jaw and shoulders, maybe just invite some ease into your body. What would it be like if you had a little more ease in your body right now? And when you're ready, you can invite me to criticize you, and just remember to let the words land in the space. Karen, you shouldn't have said what you said in that room because I was actually in charge.
I realize I probably blindsided you, which was not my intention, and I apologize for that. So it's interesting. So that actually did happen, and I hadn't done the centering practice previously with this, and it's very interesting to see what my response is now. And Lisa, perhaps you'd like to just give a comment in terms of your experience of both me in personality and me in center, very briefly.
It was difficult for me to see your body, to be honest, on the screen. But what I did notice, Karen, was that the second time when you were centered, I was definitely not as aggressive. I felt I was much more direct and a bit shouty the first time. Second time, I kind of didn't feel like I needed to be. I felt like I was softer with you. And I guess it was because of what you were setting up. That is the way that it felt to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And thanks for that, because that was my experience as well of receiving it. And the one thing I would say is that when we're in personality, what happens is we separate and we put up a boundary. So that aggression and me feeling aggressive, that increases. Versus when we're centered, we're in this together. And so the invitation is when you have your practice, when you have your play and experiment now, is to make sure that you are in this together. So with your partner, see them as in your, remember I spoke about peripersonal space? So what you want to do is you want to expand your peripersonal space to include them. And we're in the territory of imagination. So we're actively using imagination. So I just want to check with you whether the exercise is clear in terms of what you're going to do. And does everyone have a criticism that they can share with their partner? Okay, so literally one sentence, and do not, I want to just remind you before you go into the rooms, this is about the phenomenon. Do not get into the content. So have the experience in the body is the invitation. And I think if we go, Julia, for 6 minutes each way, it won't be 6 minutes. You can have a conversation in the 12 minutes about what your experience was. Then we'll come back, take any insights, questions, and then close.
Great. You want the rooms open? There they are. Okay, good. Shall I pause?
Yeah, good idea. Thank you. Andre is not going. Just smile at each other while we wait for.
They should be back. I mean, it's on. Yeah.
No, they'll all be back. Here we go. So welcome back from the other side. And we'd love to hear experiment illuminating, experiment failed, just a few brief comments on what happened for you.
I'll go. We were having a bit of a laugh and saying, I think it's safe to say that your big experiment is a success. It really does work online. Well, it certainly worked for me and Pete. That's who I partnered with. And we had a similar experience to what you had, just the shift from the centering and how the criticism landed differently and more softly. I noticed I was able to reflect and hear the criticism after I'd centered when I was receiving the criticism, whereas before I'd centered, I was just hearing the glaring criticism. I wasn't even able to process the content of the criticism. And then also, like you said, Lisa, we both noticed how the criticism itself came differently. And whether that's because by doing the centering practice for the other person, we centered ourselves, or we were receiving the person we were criticizing differently, we don't know. But both times we criticized, more sensitively, I think. So, so that was our feedback. We really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Claudia. So it would be great. We want to honor time. So I do want to check, did anyone have an epic fail? Because that's equally valid. We'd love to hear if it was like it just didn't work. What do you make of that? Well, Lisa, I don't think we've done our job. All right, one last comment that you'd like to make, either about the experience or about the time together before we start to wrap?
Can I?
Correct.
Okay, we also just had so much fun. I was with Anita, and we were reflecting on things that actually really happened. Our question was, often you don't anticipate criticism, né? So we were wondering, is this something that you do every morning before you go to work? And how long does it last? Is it like pay as you go? How frequently do you kind of have to reapply?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Thank you for that. So we've never yet met anyone who's over-centered. So that's the upshot. And we would really recommend that you have a centering practice, perhaps starting your day and then throughout the day. And when Lisa and I spoke, which we haven't mentioned here, is how what's really lovely is, lots of people have body practices that they do at the beginning of the day, but it doesn't necessarily translate to outside of off the mat, if you like. So a meditation practice, we would really say, if you can center 10 times a day, then you start to rehabilitate that muscle. And then there will be, we talk about, there's some situations where we talk wattage. So the wattage isn't so high. So we're able to, in the moment, move into center. It does take a few short years. It would be has been my experience. The other thing you can do is after something has happened. So let's say you've received a criticism and you weren't in the moment able to center, which takes some practice and some building capacity, is you can center afterwards. So you can say, okay, and that's the beauty of the body and imagination, is you go back to, and you can play back the experience and then say, okay, what would my response be from this shift? And it's a very rare in life that there isn't an opportunity to go back and have a different conversation. So when we do go back and have a different conversation, how do we want to be in the conversation? So to see it as cumulative as opposed to it's once off. So great question. Thank you. One last thing we're going to we'll then transition to close, and just to say that if anyone wants to be in touch with us, you'll have our email addresses, and you really are welcome to come with questions, comments. This is for you, Pete. While you were in the room, we did a little bit of a check, and that power posing research that Amy Cuddy did, you can click on the Forbes article. I've just popped it in the chat. And basically, it bears out her research. They're saying, while the sample group was small, what she was researching, she was on the money with. So, yeah. All right. How are we? I'm going to center and not be driven by time. How's that? So the last thing we'd like to leave you with, two things, is share screen. And this picture, by the way, is of Wendy and Tafani doing Aikido. So it's a lovely, lovely picture to bring into the room. And under duress, this is a quote by Bruce Lee, we do not rise to our expectations, but fall to the level of our training. And so, Andre, coming back to what you were saying, we want to have a way of practicing so that we lift up our capacity, we grow our capacity. And then the last thing to say is we do offer programs, and it's interesting. I agree with you, Pete. It's very sad news that Wendy has passed on. Her legacy hasn't, and we are very passionate about carrying that on. So we have a level 1 program in August, and that's the fundamentals, and that's where we do start to apply pressure to each other. We take the basic centering practice and we use it in multiple different ways. We also bring in advocating and we work with inspiration. So there are a variety of ways that we look at this leadership embodiment model. And that's on the 17th and 18th of August in Cape Town. And then level 2 is on the 21st and 22nd of September. And we use the foundational practices, but then we start to up the ante, so instead of it being, for example, a small criticism, perhaps it's a medium criticism. And having had the practice of centering, how do we work with things? We also look at how this relates to leadership. And then we are running a leadership embodiment coach training. And that's, working within and through the body requires time and a building. And so that's what the coach training is about. And if you would like to be in touch with either of us, there are our email addresses. So I think, Lisa, is there anything I've left off in relation to this?
No, I think you've covered it all.
Okay. All right. Good. I just want to say thank you to everyone for being present on the call. And I mean being present on the call. It's really felt wonderful to be in community with you. And Julia, thank you to you.
Thank you, both of you, Lisa and Karen, for coming. That was a fantastic experience, one that I'm going to build on. So thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing the rest of you at supervision sessions in the future. Thank you very much for coming, and have a lovely Tuesday day or night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Claudia. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.